is something that I kind of felt like I knew, but it's always that little bit extra that I feel like keeps you ahead of the game. So I hope that over the course of the presentation, you'll experience the same. Let's see. Gaining a general understanding and specific tips. I think we'll be able to cover both of those today too. So on the poll, and then we will get into it. So, and oh, there is a Q&A feature for the webinar, so please feel free to add in questions throughout the presentation. The way that the Zoom sharing works, it's hard for me to see those as it's going. I might check throughout the presentation to see if there are any. Otherwise, I'll wait till the end and just go through them at that time. All right. So I had introduced myself before, but I'm Donato D'Andrea, president of Rain Castle. I started in this business when I was a junior in college, and I've done websites, SEO, digital marketing. Pretty much it's all I've done. So ever since I was in college till now. So this is such an exciting time in digital marketing and understanding the implications of it. Um, these are just the things that we do. So we do the full service of full service suite of things, but today talking about digital marketing. So what we're going to do today is give a bit of an AI search overview. We're going to understand why it's important, ranking factors, visibility tracking. This will be useful information, especially for the people that are new to this topic, while also giving some others some more information. And then one thing I wanted to incorporate into this presentation, and I'm not spending a huge portion of the presentation on it, so we will be talking more about tips and tools that have come out, but understanding AI brand perception, because it is a topic that hasn't been really nearly discussed as much as AI visibility and discovery, but it's so important. And we're going to discuss the foundation for what you can do now to increase your online visibility and generate business results from the internet. So I know from what we've done so far and experimented with, we have been happy to see some leads coming in from these AI searches, and I'm sure some that are on this call have as well. I am going to take one look at the Q&A. All right, nobody's in the Q&A or the chat saying they can't hear me. I usually try to remember in the beginning to make sure the audio is coming through clearly. So I'm assuming everybody hears me fine. All right. So this was an interesting stat that SEMrush put out, and I even thought it could be a little bit conservative. I shared this the last time I did this presentation was in August with everything that we have learned so far, and I've since updated it with some of the tools that have been developed to make this a little less daunting that I'm going to share today. But overall, people are projected to really start using these LLMs and more than traditional Google organic search by 2028. That's kind of where you can see the blue line of organic search. They think that'll keep going down to 2028, and then the LLMs will surpass it. But it should be interesting. Like I heard on another webinar, old habits die hard. I think people will still use Google in combination with this for at least a quite a while longer. But we've already seen with Google AI mode, they're kind of most likely going in that same direction where it's more in that chat feature. All right, so let's get into talk a little bit about the different types, because that's one thing that you see in all these different webinars and up on the LinkedIn feed are the different, people talking about these different abbreviations. So I just wanted to stop and make sure we define them. The one in the beginning that I've just been using is more of a general term is AI optimization. So what are you doing to optimize for the search, AI search in general, and now also optimizing your brand perception for AI. There's also generative engine optimization, GEO, where you're optimizing with high quality content that's going to be used as a source when somebody goes into a chat GPT or one of the LLMs and researching, doing different content and coming back with consistently seeing your brand pop up as the source of those answers and then building trust that way. And then answer engine optimization, AEO, that's really the one that a lot of businesses and organizations, particularly, especially in B2B or any real businesses, how are you optimizing towards the questions that your target market is most likely to go in to And you can use ChatGPT as an answer engine. If you ask it a question, it's going to give you an answer. But there's also Perplexity and Google AI mode where people are going in and asking for recommendations, either on how to solve a problem or for a certain company. And those are the ones that you especially want to focus on if you have hopes to generate business leads and revenue from these chats. But you do need to kind of cover both as well. So it's a little bit about the content strategy shift has been the best way to explain the difference between what people have done in the past for SEO and what people are now doing to kind of incorporate AI optimization. So it's not just about writing a huge quantity of blogs or pages that are hyper super specific to certain keywords and phrases. Those keywords and things like that can certainly still be a really good guide towards what kind of content should you have on your website based on just knowing that people are searching for answers to those kind of keywords and topics frequently. But it is shifting a little bit where that's guiding what is the core, why is somebody searching this? Why are they asking the LLM this? And how do we then become the source and create content that answers those questions and solves those problems? And that's where we put in here. It is a multi-platform benefit because if you write high quality content that's really geared towards what your audience needs answers for, then you are going to have a good multi-platform benefit with SEO, GEO, and AEO. And aside from that, you're just going to be creating a whole lot of really good content that your target market wants that's going to then be useful on social media, offline materials, useful to the sales and business development people. So that's one of the more exciting things where we can start creating content and optimizing in a way that does have this multi-platform benefit as well. So talking a little bit more on the search intent, website design and development is really one of our core services. So I figured we would just use that as an example of understanding the intent. So I have, we've all seen the funnel graphic, and you think of it in terms of the top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, and it kind of is similar with search intent when you're thinking of how you're going to create a content strategy that's optimized for here. So at the top, you see how we have, how do I know I need a new website? How long do websites last? That's really early stage where somebody might start feeling like they need to do something, but they're still very early on in their consideration process. And then once they get to the middle, they might start thinking of, okay, I'm committed. What platform should we think about? Now, what makes a good website for my industry or my business? And that's where a lot of that answer engine optimization can come in the future, is really writing content that's specifically catered towards the industry and the market that you want to serve. So that's where you create a lot of content optimized for that. And then to optimize for an LLM, maybe you're doing a whole lot more content around these kinds of questions and answers, hoping that somebody will see you as the person answering that. And maybe when they get to this phase, they'll remember you from then, and you already have that trust built up. But really, that's why a lot of companies will sometimes start more so in the middle and before going to the very top. But and from what I've seen and what I've tested, it does seem that if you do have more covered at each level, it's only gonna build your authority over that topic and make it more likely that you're going to gain that visibility. Now in the bottom we get to high. What are some good web designers near me? This is more so where it's going as people are really learning how to use these platforms more and more. They are getting better about really being more specific about what they want for recommendations. So this first one, some people will still do something like this, where it's just what are some web designers near me? But what more and more people are learning to do are saying, what are some companies that do web design for my industry? And that's where it gets a lot more specific. And that's why, as part of this understanding the intent and the searches and what people are putting in, that's why you have to have so much more robust content on the site. We're going to get into some of those examples later on in the presentation, but you can kind of see how it's shifting. And one thing I didn't add on here is if you're doing a good job with the middle and the early, and you're getting some of your brand discovery early on, towards the bottom, the high is going to be, where Raincastle. Somebody might say like, does Raincastle build websites for my industry? And they'll name their industry. And then based on the content on my website, my portfolio, my LinkedIn social post, anything I've ever put on the internet, the AI will answer if it thinks I can do a website for that industry. So that's part of the big shift in really increasing the importance of optimizing for AI and how important it is not just for discovery, but for what your leads might be asking these AI platforms about your company. Now, this is kind of getting more into some of the tips of what we know so far, but what are some of the AI search ranking factors? One of the big ones that came out early on and has stayed true that it's a significant factor is just having your company mentioned across the web by relevant high quality sources. So that's where the PR has really come out in terms of just an added value of getting your name on those different media sites where possible that are relevant to your industry. Depending on your industry, there's also a lot of different top provider lists or award lists that you can be a part of that have a significant weight on AI search. Sometimes some of our clients are like, well, those are just pay to play. Those aren't even, but for now at least, the it is a big part of it. So if there are some of those award sites or list sites that you've chosen to just not really participate in the past, now it's becoming possibly something you should consider. But that's something that you can then verify as you kind of move along and do your research and figure out which are actually getting cited by these various sources. The quality, originality, and expertise is also a big ranking factor. So we've all seen the big uptick in terms of people using AI to generate content. And the problem is if it's purely AI generated and there is no additional insight or originality or basically putting your twist or your point of view on that content, there's really no reason for you to replace the previous source of that information. Statistics and testimonials are also really well, part of the ranking factor it adds to the originality and the quality, plus it proves the points of what you're writing content about and trying to become authoritative over. And then structured, well formatted content is very important. And one of the biggest things that's been kind of exciting that I've really believe is the content freshness and updated content is a lot more heavily weighted with the AI search bots compared to Google. So if you're trying to rank for something on Google in the top 10, it seems like it can be very hard to really, break into that top 10 over links that are pre already there from the history. But when you compete with some of those competitors and you're coming out with fresh, high quality content, you can break into those recommendations a lot sooner. I know for our own company, we have focused a lot of our content marketing this year for traditional SEO purposes, and where we have seen a majority of the leads this year from that effort has been from ChatGPT. So it's just interesting to see that you can be rewarded in the short term by some of these programs, and the content freshness is a big part of that. And I'm going to try to mention this later on in the presentation, but that's where one of the tips I would share, kind of going back to the poll, is that for a lot of your best content on your website, that's where you're going to want to have some kind of workflow or schedule where you're going to want to go in and update that content maybe once a quarter if you can, or once every 6 months if once a quarter is too often, or once a year. For instance, one of the content blogs we did last year, one of the industries we do a lot of work in is in biotech. And last year we published a blog that was like the 2025, biotech web design trends. Well, now I need to make sure that we go back and rewrite and update that blog for next year, because the AIs are going to say, "Wow, that's old. It's kind of maybe it already is old news. I should be doing 2026, maybe during the holidays when things slow down a little bit." But the freshness is definitely one of the biggest things that is new. Where instead of with traditional SEO, like a lot of people over the years were like, "Well, let's just pump out content, crazy, as much as possible for all these variations of keywords as possible." Now it's almost like you kind of want to slow down and really make sure that what you do put out there is high quality and specialized and up to date. All right. So this is one of the newer things that I added to the presentation since last time because there are some tools now available that help with tracking for AI. So for this part, you can do it yourself without paying for a tool. So I'm going to share the tool once we go through some of these free ways, but you can simply test prompts manually in AI tools. So for me, that would be going in and I would go in incognito and in ChatGPT or Perplexity, and I would ask, what are some of the best top web design companies in Boston or in Massachusetts? And then I would see the answers, and I would get a feel, am I even getting mentioned? If I'm not, what companies are, and what are the sort why are those companies getting recommended? And the good thing about the AI is you can then ask, hey, why didn't you mention my company? And it will actually give you a good answer and some good insight on why you weren't included and give you a little bit of an action plan for what you need to do to be included. And then you can also assess your brand perception to see how AI tools describe your brand, adjust your content. So I'm not going to get too much into that yet because I have another part later in the presentation that will make it a lot more clear. And tracking AI driven results is one of the harder things now because when people learn about your company or brand on these different chat AI programs, oftentimes they'll go directly to your website. I even think I was telling another client this morning, I even think that, I've had a couple of leads in the last month or even 2 weeks that emailed us directly, and I'm pretty sure that they found my contact information while they were chatting with the AI, and they never even went to our website to contact us. So the best thing you can do is really ask, how did you hear about us? That's always an important thing. And then if you have a contact form on your website and you have a drop down that says, how did you hear about us? Just add ChatGPT and some of those other LLMs and answer engines programs into that list so that people can start self attributing where they found your company. And those are ways that you can do it without having to pay for an additional tool. Some that you can pay for are SEMrush and has an AI toolkit and Profound. I haven't used Profound yet, but they were one of the first ones that I'd heard of and came out. I just happened to already be heavily invested with SEMrush for our SEO work, so it didn't really make sense to try different software. But Profound seems to do the job too, and they're fairly similarly priced. SEMrush is $99 a month, and you get a whole suite of tools that I can show you. But one of them is AI prompt tracking, and that makes it so that you can pick a prompt you want to track, and then you can test if you are in an automated way showing up for those prompts. So that works. That works really well. So I'm going to pull up the example now. Pause my share and pull that up. Let's see. Actually, did already have it pulled up previously, but cannot seem to find the tab now. Here it is. So ChatGPT. And my prompts I have set up on ours are fairly simple, just because they were working fine for what I needed. But you can really make them into actual prompts with questions and things like that. So let me pull this here, and then I'll share my screen. So the prompts I had set up are, it should finish loading any moment now. And you can see with AI, it really does go up, down, all around over time. So that's why you got to commit to that consistent, ongoing content production. But I can see here that for a prompt like biotech web design, we are getting mentioned, number one. So that's gone up, but it's saying as of today, this was different actually 7 days ago. Says it does go on and up, saying we're missed in terms of being mentioned in the company's area. So then I can say, oh, what's up with that? So I go to view the SERP, and then it will load the response from ChatGPT. It'll say, what is it? And that's where I'm getting reference of what is biotech web design. And then that's where you can see my company is the source of the answer for that, and then also the answer here. So we have discoverability there. But what we usually also see is that when it comes down to agencies and design partners, that's where it's kind of this gets refreshed almost daily with what companies they actually recommending you contact. So that's where, we'll put out some more content and fix that. But that's how that tool is really helpful to know where is your company getting mentioned in these various terms and what do you need to do? So if you see some slippage, now you got to go in and make sure you get a new case study added to and we do have one queued up for a website, a biotech site we just launched, and that should correct that. But I think that does kind of tie back well to the importance of the content freshness and committing to it. And one thing that it also does really make very clear is why it's so much harder with AI optimization. You really do need, even if you do a number of services for a number of industries, it can be hard to properly optimize for all of them. And you kind of do need to pick your battles, unless you have unlimited resources and you can put out enough content and authority to convince these programs that you really are a specialist in multiple areas. So that's where you can see even on ours where life sciences is our one of our core focuses. That's where we're focusing our SEO and AIO efforts, and it's worked well. We've been happy with it. All right. So why top visibility matters in AI search. So oftentimes, there's only 3 to 7 showing in an AI recommendation. So if you're not in that 3 to 7, you're kind of invisible for it. And to be honest, even in traditional search, not many people are scrolling past the first, 5 links nowadays. Even the top three, if you factor in AI overview or all the sponsored links and the maps, you have to scroll quite a ways just to get down into the organic listing. So it's kind of just making it more apparent that if you do need to be in that top area to really feel like you're going to have any traction. The quality, relevance, and freshness will earn you that spot. And the most exciting thing about it, though, is if you do it right, ideally you're going to attract your best customers and clients, and that's really works well. I know for our agency where we have had a lot of success optimizing locally for generic terms, brand agency near me, web design company near me, things like that. And we do get some decent leads that way over the course of the year, but a good majority of them are not always the best fit for where we are at and the types of clients we want to work with. So what we find is when we get leads from ChatGPT and these other AI platforms, since they are leads driven by our marketing efforts, they are often more so in those industries, those types of size companies that we're looking for, because that's what we're optimizing content and case studies for. So that is a little bit one of the main things that's exciting is you're kind of optimizing your site for really truly for your target market and not for a general broad niche where then you have to sift through whatever comes in. All right, so now let's get into a little bit of what you can do now. So really showcasing your capabilities and certifications is one thing. If you don't have that on your website, then well, especially the capability. So if somebody goes on there and says, "Does X company do X?" The AI will say, "Well, unfortunately, usually what they'll do is they'll make something up, and instead of saying I don't know." So you really want to have it very clear on there what your capabilities are, and if there are certifications or licenses that are required for what you do, make sure it's clearly stated and explained on your website to make sure that that's part of what would be included. Because somebody might, as they learn how to use these, they might go in there and say, I need a company that does this and is certified in that. And if you don't have it clear that you do that service and have that certification, then you're not going to be included in the list of recommendations. Another thing that a lot of places are doing now are really focusing on featuring case studies, publications, testimonials, statistics, frequently asked questions, use cases, examples, basically just highly specific content that could be added to your website that is very focused on your target market and their specific problems and questions. And even in some cases where the question could be relevant for 3 different verticals that you might want to work with, you kind of do want to have within those specific catered pages, you want it to be phrased towards that target market because the AI, they have a lot of content that they want to sift through and analyze and update. And the better you can spell it out for them that it's specifically content relevant for that person that you're trying to market to, the more likely it is that it's going to cite you as the answer for those questions. And also evaluate priority third party sources and plan for them. So that's everything that's outside of your website. So the good thing is you have your website, you have your social media, PR if your company does PR. You have a lot of these ways that you can influence being discovered for AI. And you can do that without having to worry about a whole lot of extra third-party sources. But once you are doing those first priority things, you do need to consider where do we need to be? I was at a conference a couple weeks ago, and they called it the watering hole for your clients and your target market. You know, where are they, and how do you get there in front of them? Because you should be anyway, because that's where they are, and because AI is going to use that as a checkbox to determine if you're relevant or not. This just actually stems a little bit and repeats a little bit from the beginning, but just when you're thinking about, you're probably already thinking, what can I add for content to my website that is going to do these things that we're talking about today, and what's thin and what's not so thin, and how do we make our position ourselves a certain way? And when you start thinking about that, just think about prioritizing what's the most important, what's really going to help your company. Um, I know for us, when we did this exercise, it looked like biotech just happened to be the biggest priority in terms of some of the existing results. So we should build off of that. And then we want to expand into our other areas as well. But that's just an example of how we help to prioritize. But you do want to use statistics wherever possible within your content. So that's one area that we're working on because we're not always the best. It's a little bit like, you know, a contractor when he redoes a kitchen. It's like, oh, I should have taken a picture of that before we did it. But the best you can, try to document and use statistics where you can. Add in quality quotes, either a testimonial or a quote from somebody in your organization where possible. The AIs do love to pull out statistics and quotes and then reference you. And then structure sections clearly with question-based headings and short answers. That actually is another example of writing content for a website that is good for real people and AI bots. Is just make it so like you have a question formatted heading and then a short answer, and then you can go on to your long form and fully answer it. But if you can make it that quick question and answer within the content and then carry on with the full explanation, that is going to really be a lot more scannable. And one of the things that I was reading recently also, and seems to be true for real people and AI bots, is they really don't often read every word that's on the page. It will kind of scan the page for sections and it'll read the headings, bullet points, tables, some of those called out areas to assess the page. And that's where you want to put some of that really important information into those scannable blocks so that an AI can read it and your target market. Ideally, when your customers on the page, they're gonna focus on those sections as well. And if it's the most important information, then that's really what we're hoping for. All right, so next I'm going to talk about AI brand perception. I do see a couple of questions in the Q&A, and I will get through the brand perception fairly quickly and then move on to the Q&A. And then I have a few appendix slides if we do need to go through them, depending on the questions. But AI brand perception, I pulled this off of a off of Google. It seemed to be a decent explanation, but AI analyzes tone and sentiment across reviews, forums, social platforms, and media. The signals reveal whether people talk about your brand positively, negatively, or neutrally, and in what context. And that is part of it. But your website and your own social media also has a huge impact on your AI brand perception. So I would just add that aside from those third party sources, which significantly influence a brand perception, it is a lot of the times your own content that will have that, especially in B2B type of companies where, you know, you might be a company that's out there and, you know, people aren't running to Yelp or Google reviews, you know, whether they're happy or not happy typically. in many cases for B2B companies. And the AI brand perception for companies like that is mostly shaped based on what you are putting out there for information. So I'd like to show you the SEMrush example. Pause this here and pull it back up. So I'm kind of using ourselves as the example again. Actually, I have two I can show you. Show you ours first and kind of one thing that we did do. All right. Actually, I'm going to show the demo version first so you can see the full capabilities of it. All right, you all should see the screen now. So this is the demo that SEMrush has for, they're using this company called warbyparker.com. And it's pretty cool. It makes it so that you can look at Google AI mode, ChatGPT web search, ChatGPT, Perplexity, and Gemini to evaluate your brand performance. And it's kind of cool. It's using Way Parker, and you can see this Warby Parker. They put in their competitors, and you can do that manually. You can add competitors as well, and they put in their four competitors. And then as you go down, it gives you an overall sentiment. So you hold 10% share with 78% sentiment, the best among peers, invest and push towards clearly 13%. So it's really giving you some good ideas of what you can do compared to your competitors to improve your own perception further and where there might be some gaps. And then it gives you some insights too to consider. And then if I go down here, it compares you to your competitors this way. And I want to show you the part that I've been more so using is in the perception area. So if you click to perception and you just come down, it'll give you your brand strengths and areas for improvement. So you can read your strengths and understand where people are seeing you as the best and most credible. And then you can see the areas of improvement. And it's interesting. Sometimes you might see some things in areas for improvement, and you might say, oh, well, we don't do that anyway, so I'm not worried about that. But then you might see something that you do want to change and improve the perception. So that's what I'm going to move on to next in terms of how I've kind of managed that. So this is for Raincastle. And then if I switch it to ChatGPT and I go to perception, I can see that we have a very good favorable perception, and it's strong. And then it's suggesting more case studies, more testimonials. So that's what we're going to be working on. This talks about how all of our brand strength factors, about our strong fit for mid-market, like just the things that from what everything on the internet can tell about us, what our strengths are. And then you can see here our areas of improvement is as we're a smaller boutique scale compared to global firms, which that's true. So I don't know if we would really battle that. What we'll probably do is add into our case studies. We do work with some fairly large global organizations, so just making it more clear that we do support those kinds of companies and how do I make case studies that explain that. But what I'd like to explain is I saw this on ChatGPT, and one of these areas of improvement it said was like average turnaround times longer than others or something like that. And that's partly because when it comes to website design, people can claim to build this website, in 1 week or one day. And our average timeline published on some of our case studies was more in that 3 to 6 month range. So we had to fix that though, because if somebody asks an AI, does Raincastle build sites on accelerated timelines, which we do, it would have probably said no, they don't do that. So what we did do was we published a blog that talked about a recent launch. And we talked all about how we did this site in 3 weeks for this biotech company from discovery to wireframing, design and development, and how it was an accelerated timeline and why we did that. And then sure enough, when we go back into our brand performance, that area of improvement about the speed and timelines was gone. So it really is interesting to see how publishing your own content, your website, and just educating the AI better about your company can alter the perception in a more favorable way, which is the goal. So when you're going to evaluate your own brand perception, you can kind of evaluate the current brand sentiment is, and that's pretty easy to do. You say, this is our company. Can you please tell us a bit about what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses? And it will give you a clear answer of what AI thinks your company does, what your specialties are, and what your strengths and weaknesses are based on what's on your website, what's not on your website, and if there are third-party reviews or anything it can pull from, what those are, so you can get a feeling for what your benchmark starting point is. And that's if you're not using the SEMrush example that I just shared. Also, once you've done that, you should start asking AI some of the questions you think people will ask about your company, because that's the whole other aspect to brand perception that's coming into play with AI. Just imagine how all this work and all this time and energy and money to get the leads in the door, and your salesperson has a meeting, and then the person goes, and then before they decide to buy or sign the contract or anything, they go to AI and start asking questions about your company. It's almost like it's a little scary if you don't, but it's only scary if you don't know what AI is going to answer. So if you think about what are those questions that the leads and prospects might search about your company, and are the answers accurate, and are they favorable, or is there some work needed to be done? And also, it's very helpful if you're in a very competitive area or space. Start asking what companies might they compare you to. We recently signed up with a PEO company for my company for HR and benefits, payroll, that type of stuff. And I did use Perplexity to compare my options. So I said, how does Insperity compare to JustWorks and this company and that? And it would give me a nice table comparing the two companies. But my clients and prospects are probably doing the same thing. So I also want to get a feeling for how do I compare to those companies when they do that in a similar sense. It'd be a little harder for me to predict because we have so many competitors and there isn't just one that we're constantly compared to. But some other industries and clients, it would be a lot easier to know, okay, if they're considering us, they're probably also considering this company or that. And how are we being compared? And are those comparisons fair and accurate? And based on the answers, you'll have pretty quickly have an idea where you want to prioritize your time and energy. So my senior graphic designer that I usually bother to update these presentations for me, up to hours before the presentation is out of the office. So I try to do a pretty simple conclusion slides, and I do have a few more that I could share, but I'll probably just share them with a recording so you can see it. But overall, somebody said this last week and I think it's so true, is optimizing for AI is good SEO, but that really isn't all it is. A lot of people are thinking of, if I optimize for AI, is that good for SEO? And the answer is absolutely yes. But really, AI optimizing for AI is just good marketing. It's really making it so that we can create high quality content, custom catered towards our best clients, prospects, and target market, and really put it all out there. So that's really the key message there. So you'll improve SEO, improve content, and the biggest shift that a lot of people are seeing, and I have seen it in a lot of companies too, is that you really need a streamlined content strategy and positioning on all of your channels. You can't just be doing goofy SEO stuff on your website and posting whatever you want on social media that doesn't match up with how you're trying to position yourself on SEO, and then PR that also reinforces what you're trying to do on those other two outfit. Everything needs to be streamlined. Otherwise, it's going to confuse the overall AI perception. And probably for many, many years, it probably also confuses real people. I know there's been a lot of, if you just think of it, we've had clients over the past that do like construction and things like that, and they'll try to position themselves as these like high-end providers of the services. And then you go to their website, and it's just an obviously over-optimized kind of generic, crappy website with keywords and things like that. And sometimes that can happen with a lot of other organization sites. And now with what you're optimizing for now, you really want to lead with the positioning, the differentiation, the proven processes, and supporting case studies and resources that really back up your overall strength in those areas, and really put that across all the different channels. So I know there are a few questions in the chat, and I'd be happy to get to those now. And please feel free to add to those as well. One person says, "What is it considered a meaningful update for content to be considered fresh?" I actually don't think you need a major rewrite of the content for it to be considered fresh. If you're simply updating a section or adding a section to the content itself, updating some images or headline, all those little tweaks can be considered good updates to keep the content fresh. And I know on my core service level pages, what I like to do is whenever we host a webinar or publish a new really good blog, well, a really robust blog post that relates directly to one of our services, I like to go to that service page and update the featured resource on the page with the headline description, date, and link to the resource and image. Even something like that I have seen helps keep the content fresh, and I've even seen ranking improvements on those particular pages after doing something as simple as that. Another person asked, to what extent is Gen AI using content in socials like LinkedIn to answer questions? Um, I don't have the exact number, but I believe the last I saw in terms of citations, um, LinkedIn was in, I think, the top four most cited website when it came to a lot of these LLMs and answers and things like that. So it definitely goes to show that that content in those LinkedIn posts is playing into this whole optimization strategy even more than it ever has, which is exciting and really increases the importance of using those platforms. All right, so those were the two questions so far. So I'll hold here and wait on if there's anybody else that has anything to add or any additional questions to add in. Otherwise, I'll quickly scroll through a few slides while you're doing that. If you are starting from scratch and you really have maybe a bare bones website or a bare bones overall presence, the first thing you can do is start organizing your topics, create a keyword universe around those topics, find your prompts related to those key topics, and then optimize your website and presence overall and expand out to create that digital footprint that you need to achieve the level of visibility that you might hope for. Pause. There's another question just came through. One person asks, where do you start? Where do you suggest someone starts with positioning themselves? So that's a good question. And actually, our next webinar will probably be completely dedicated to the brand perception and positioning topic because one of our core services is brand messaging for companies and defining your positioning, your brand pillars, and things like that. And then how do you test that against your AI perception and make sure that the way that you're positioned online lines up with all of those. Another question, is there a baseline for how your old website can be, is there a baseline for how your old website can be to take advantage of this? Um, there are a few tools that are available in SEMrush to try to get an understanding of your current AI visibility, but I don't think they've built them out and I don't trust them yet. But really, the main thing you can do is go in and test your own prompts and evaluate your visibility that way. So once you go through and you have your overall universe defined, you can get through and organize your topics by service, information, product, brand, and create that universe. And that is a combination of internal research, checking your current search phrases, and competitor research. And you want to come up with these kind of clusters around your prompts, whereas on ours we'll have web design and then you have content management system options, best practices, FAQs, case studies, things like that. And then you want to plan for the optimizations by assigning those topic clusters and content to the proper pages where possible, or blog posts or resources. And then really document what already exists versus what is new and prioritize what you're going to work on based off of that. And another part that I didn't put on here that's really important to overall search and to the AIs is really making sure that you're identifying which pages, how they interlink. So on the previous step, if I have a blog about the different CMS platforms, I would always want it to end with learn more about our web design services and then link to that cluster page and then follow a similar practice for some of these other topic areas as well. And as you're doing this, you want to have original quality content. You want to use AI without losing your voice. You really do want to make sure you're adding value to the content. So what I've been, my favorite way as a tip to use AI for content writing is I like to basically record myself covering a topic and then use AI to take the transcript and write the draft of the blog, following an outline. And that's been very helpful for me to be able to use AI to write content and do it effectively and with quality. So that's a good way to do it. And there was a study that came out recently from Ahrefs that they did a massive study to determine if AI assisted human content had a negative effect on rankings, and it did not. So if anybody who's afraid of using AI to help write content because of SEO implications, it's fair to say that you don't need to be worried about it. It's more so if you're using AI to completely write content that adds no value. I wouldn't say it's going to hurt your site, but it's probably not going to help it rank over sites that have better quality already, because you're not going to replace anybody who's already in those areas. All right. Position tracking is important just to know if what you're doing is even remotely working. And then the quarterly updates and adding more content to the pages is another big step of ensuring that you do everything properly. So thank you for your time. We'll probably keep the chat open for one more minute just to see if there's any last remaining questions. You can always visit our website at raincastle.com and set up a time with me, even if it's just to talk about what we talked about today or something else. Happy to talk shop and see how we can add to your own learning. And also, please, there's a short survey after the meeting closes. Please complete the survey. It helps. The biggest thing is help to know how we're doing. Do we need to make them more technical, more whatever? And there's also a suggestion for future topics. All right, thank you. One person said it was great. I appreciate it. I'm very sensitive to the fact that we're all very busy, and whenever we have people joining a webinar and taking basically an hour out of their day to sit with us and talk about these topics, it's exciting, but I always want to make sure that we're providing value. All right, another one. Thank you. Thank you, Deb. Um, Also agrees. Yeah, hopefully it was helpful. I'm looking forward to the next one where we'll be talking a lot about perception and how it all ties back to a brand messaging deck. Awesome. More thank yous. Thank you. All right. Well, I'll let everybody get back to their day. We'll say in whatever the terms, get 5 or 7 minutes back in your day. And hopefully we'll see you all in another webinar soon.